Hello, everybody. Hi. Nice to be talking to you in the next hour. I thought I'd show my face just so you can see there's me. I'm probably going to take my face back off again as we go through this webinar for the next hour. I hope you're all well. We've been doing a few webinars over the last week or so. So if you've been involved in any of those from PMO Flash Mob, welcome. This one's a PMO learning one. So it's a slightly different vibe. We perhaps not as informal. And so essentially, if you've been using Zoom anyway, I'm assuming a lot of you have over the last week, you'll be able to see that there's a chat box and you're quite happy and free to chat amongst yourselves. That'd be great. I'm probably not going to be looking at it as much as I have been before, concentrating on hopefully delivering a great webinar for you. And but Melissa will be able to take care of you there. It's quite a packed hour. I always like to over deliver. And so hopefully they may be trying for some questions at the end. But if not, let's do another webinar where I can probably get those questions answered. What I have done is when you registered, we did ask you some questions about, what we thought about your CV and what you'd ideally, what you're struggling with. And I have incorporated some of those into the session. I also asked earlier on in the week if anybody was brave enough to share their actual CV, and we do have one. So what I'll be able to show you is, how to improve on a CV by actually using somebody's existing CV. So just make it a little bit more real life, I suppose. So we are going to get going. So sit back. Hopefully you've got a cup of tea or your lunch or something like that. I'm going to take my face off. I'll see you at the end of it. And yeah, let's see how we get on. So we are going to be talking about PMO CV. Now, when we first said we were going to do this session, this is before everything that's going on is happening. So we were planning on doing this about 4 or 5 weeks ago. So it feels like a completely different world now. And I'm assuming some people, when I originally thought about doing this, I didn't think it would be that some people might immediately have to be using their CV, or certainly in the next few months, but that might be the case. And really, it's not what we set out to be doing at this time. But hopefully, this CV will be useful. This session will be useful for you in the coming months. But also, I see CV writing as a bit of a life skill. To be fair. I think it's something that we'll always have in various, whatever form, as we go through our careers. So hopefully you'll take some stuff away from today, and you'll be able to use it at any time. So let's crack on then. So what we're going to do is look at, I said three different areas really, and the first one around demonstrating your depth of skills and experience on the CV. And the reason why we talked about that is because it's something that I personally see that a lot of things are missing on PMO CVs. The reason why I love PMO CVs while we're doing this is that I am also a director of a project management recruitment business, and you can probably imagine as part of that business, I was focusing more around the PMO stuff, and so seeing a fair few of them over the last, I think it's about 17 years. So so I want to share that insight with you about what I see and how those mistakes and things can be changed. The other thing I get asked a lot is about the right level of role within a PMO, because we know that PMOs are different everywhere. People have different ideas about what they are. And as a practitioner, a lot of people find it quite difficult to show which level they are within a certain type of PMO. So we'll talk about that. And then we've got some general advice to get through shortlists and things, and answering your questions along the way. So just to let you know that anything that you're listening to right now, it is being recorded, and the slides and stuff, as ever, we'll share them with you afterwards. So let's crack on then. So this is not going to go launching straight into how to write a CV. And that's fundamentally an issue that I think a lot of people have, is there is actually a lot of thinking and pre-work that really needs to be done before you're actually sitting there with in front of your PC trying to write that CV. And I think the more, you know, as project people, we know that we plan, and this is absolutely the same kind of thing for thinking about your CV, in that actually there is some work to be doing before you actually put pen to paper. And it is about getting in that kind of right mindset. And hopefully with the next few slides I'll be showing you is just to try and get into that mindset and starting to actually, okay, I've not thought about thinking about it like that, or approaching it like that. So so let's start then. So, you know, listen in, we will get to the actual writing a CV bit, but there is some pre-work to be done. So I love really like older business books. You know, we see loads of business books coming out all the time. And I'm convinced that a lot of these business books are just reiterating stuff that's already gone before. And I love this book from 1994. Yeah, quite a long time ago. But they've got a really good section in here about trying to think like you're self-employed, think like a consultant, think like some of the people that have got careers where, you know, they're continuously getting on and doing well and learning and all that kind of good stuff. And there's 6 questions that I think are brilliant, and they all apply before we actually put pen to paper on the CV. So excuse the language, but what the hell do I do? It's quite in your face, but actually it's a really interesting question, because most of the time when we're doing the job, we actually neglect to think about, you know, what is it that am I actually doing? Because it's those kind of levels of things that you actually do that become the things that you will sell onto a new employer, a new gig, whatever. And so what is interesting is knowing what it is that you've actually got to sell, because that is what you're going to be putting on your CV. You know, as much as we don't like that whole idea of a CV is a marketing document, it is, and it's a marketing you. Yeah, there's no 2 ways about it. So actually understanding what it is that you do is the fundamental point. You're thinking, well, yeah, Lindsay, you know, that's really obvious. But, you know, as you watch this webinar, you'll probably see there'll be a few things you're thinking, actually, I don't do that. I would guarantee it, because a number of CVs that I read and seen in my career, I know that people are not doing this. So what is it that you've actually done? Pretty straightforward. A CV tends to be backwards looking in terms of the kind of things that you actually have done. But what is interesting is other things that start to come in about, well, what would your customers actually testify that you have done? So if you think about it from a project manager point of view as a customer of the PMO, or a senior executive that's a customer of the PMO, everything that you think that you're actually doing, could they testify to it that actually that is the case? Or do they see something else? So what you think that you offer might not necessarily be what your customers and stakeholders might actually see. It's just good to get into a different mindset, somebody else's point of view. What evidence is there that your skills are state of the art? Because actually, when we think about work, the world of work now, is that there are always new things happening. We know in PMO, absolutely in PMO, you know, the whole agile thing is just absolutely the example there about, do you have the skills in areas where PMO are venturing more into, or are being asked by the senior execs to do more of, or to think about doing for the first time? Who new do I know far beyond my company walls that are going to help me? Because actually you'll see through this webinar that the network answer comes up a lot. So actually when we think about being a really good practitioner, professional at what we do, it's not just about us in the job, but it's also about the network that we're building as we're doing that. An interesting one is that you go into each year, will your CV look different at the end of the year versus what it was at the beginning of the year? And it's an interesting question, because it's, are you actually doing things that are new or advancing or getting better? Excuse me. So it's an interesting one when we look at the beginning of the year versus the end of the year. And if you're somebody that doesn't update their CV from one moment to the next, you know, one of the things that I hope you'll take away from this is that you absolutely should be looking at it at least once a year. Okay, good questions. This is an even better one. is to think about what have I got to offer the marketplace. Is can you say why you've made your company a better place? Now this equates to those bits in the CV where people want to talk about things like key achievements. This is about building stories for when you get into the interview stage. These are the things that when they talk about CVs being about, oh, I don't like blowing my own trumpet. Well, absolutely, you better get used to playing it, because that's the whole point. You know, it's about being able to put your best self in the CV that you're writing, because one of the things that we know that we need to be doing is making sure that we stand out from the crowd. And actually with PMOs, and I'll come on to it in a second, you know, the PMO is about being able to make, you know, the objective I always say is about, you know, you're there to make sure that your organization delivers its portfolio, its programs and its projects better. You know, so are you doing that? So can you say that you're making your company a better place? When it comes to your CV as well, one of the things that I tend to see quite a lot is that people talk about the PMO as if it's theirs. And actually, I want people to get into a mindset about thinking about, we are there to offer a service. You know, so as a PMO manager, you're offering a service by creating that PMO, you know. And if you're working within a PMO, you're there to deliver and offer the services that that PMO is there to do. So when you're thinking about writing your PMO CV, the thing here is I want you to think about what it is that the business wants and needs from your particular PMO, what the objective is about that particular PMO. And of course, we're back to this question, what the hell are you doing in order to be able to deliver that PMO? The reason why I want you to keep this in your head is that actually some of the things like the objective of the PMO are some of the things that you will use in your CV. And I'll show you how you'll use that in your CV as well. So it's about language as well with the CV, and thinking about, you know, how you're going to put forward not just yourself, but what is important on a CV is being able to put forward enough details about the context and the objective of your PMO, so the people that are reading the CV can understand that context and the objectives, and then start to understand how your role is delivering to those. Hopefully that makes sense. So it's coming at it from a slightly different angle, that we're not going steaming in writing about a CV. This is another great point that I really like as well. Is the work you're currently doing good enough to put on your CV? Now I'm angling more towards, you know, when I first started to sit down and think about putting together this webinar, I put the idea out there 5 weeks ago or something, but actually I've revised the thinking about what I wanted to talk to you about today, just because of where we are right now. And I do want to talk about some kind of job survival things, and we'll do that in a second. But it's also about thinking about the role that you're doing right now, and whether you're finding yourself in a role that feels very stuck in the mud, that it feels very repetitive, that there's not much that's going on that's different. And the reasons why is that you're wanting to, you know, when you're going out there into a marketplace, you know, as much as your CV could be really well written, eloquently written, we know that the CV is also about being able to put yourself forward in a comparison against a potentially competitive field. So what we're looking for is people that are doing good stuff in PMO, and not just been doing the same old things over the last 3-4 years, or if you've been in a long-term job, or even in contracts. If you're doing the same thing on contract after contract after contract, you know, is it good enough just to keep on putting the same kind of things you're doing? Where's your evolution in your own career and in your own jobs? So I really like the question that gets you to think and reflect on, you know, right now, or, you know, when things have calmed down and we're not in a state of shock about everything that's going on. But when we get to that point where we're thinking, you know, I will be wanting to think about moving on or getting a new contract. These questions are really, should be making you think about, you know, well, how I would actually answer them. I do want to talk, like I said, about some job survival stuff, because what is interesting is that we know that, you know, jobs are not for life anymore. And when this guy wrote this book in 1994, it was at that time when all that kind of stuff was really of now, you know, that there is no job for life anymore. But I still think the things that came from it are really are still prominent and still right for this time. And I've always said that the driving force for your career, it does absolutely come from yourself, because who knows how long we'll work for any organisation. You know, we have to think about our own development and our own careers in both in our organisations that we work in today, but also outside the organisation, because this is also an issue that we regularly see, that when people are forced to move on, and God forbid that we'll not be seeing a lot of that in the coming months, but it becomes quite a bit of a shock to realise that actually over my time in my latest organisation, I've been doing things very much on that organisation's approach to PMO and all that kind of good stuff. And the shock comes when you come out into the marketplace and you realise that actually your understanding of PMO might not actually be stacking up with what is going on in the general marketplace. So I think actually taking control of your own career is absolutely essential. The second thing that I also think is really relevant to PMO is because of how difficult it is to find a PMO position in the first place. And I know a lot of you will be nodding your heads now, but when you see a job spec and you look at it, you think, this is so vague that they quite obviously don't know what they want. So I think you'll probably recognise that and be familiar with it. And yeah, you do see that a lot. And it is mainly because a lot of organisations will have, that they have different types of PMO contexts, but you get that. Find it quite difficult to articulate that enough in a job specification. But equally, we also know that there's different interpretations for different things within the PMO. So one PMO's reporting can be very different to another PMO's reporting. So you get this kind of like vagueness, which doesn't help when you're trying to write obviously a CV and apply for a job and get an interview and all that kind of good stuff. But what I have consistently seen over my career being on the other side is actually a lot of the good PMO roles do get co-created. I love this joint ventures with an employer in problem solving, because certainly if you're at the higher end of your scale of your job, in terms of like PMO management level, or being at that kind of senior contractor consultant type role, absolutely, that is the way that a lot of these things are done. So how do you get that job? It's an interesting one, because it's almost like you still have to apply for those vague jobs, but you also have to be quite open that when it comes to an interview stage, that you're quite open to, well, that's not what it said on the job spec. Absolutely, it wouldn't be what it is on the job spec. That's why you get so many people that go to an interview and they'll come out of it and said, that bears no relation. And this is absolutely the reason why. And I think it happens more and more. And I think it's absolutely the right kind of thing for PMOs. I think a lot of the time, the PMO roles go to and need that conversation to get the understanding of somebody's particular skill levels, but also their thoughts and opinions about theory around PMO and what it is that organisation is trying to do, and whether this is a good cultural fit for the person that's interviewing, all of those things. So I really like that. But also the other thing is about, I don't think we take enough jobs based on what we can actually learn from it. And there's a couple of things there about challenge. So going to roles that feel like I can probably do about 60% of that job, and 40% of it I'll be learning, and I'm excited by that, versus I'll just keep taking the same things, which is fine. If that's the way that you want to run your career and you're really comfortable with that, that's fine, that's great. But you do need to be thinking about, well, what can I learn from this? And we're going to be acquiring new skills constantly, and certainly in PMO it's been so interesting to see it over the last decade alone, just how much they're changing. So learning comes into it. So hey, yeah, you're listening to PMO Learning, so of course we're going to have a little bit of learning stuff in here, which is again, it is a competitive labour market all the time, pretty much, and I think it will get more competitive for the rest of 2020. And you do have to be thinking about, how can I stand out from the competition? So I like that line about get smarter than the next person. And how do you know how smart you are? Well, there's a number of different ways that you can do that, but I've always found that PMO flash mob really helps in terms of being able to chat to people when you're in your peer group and things like that, and you soon get a sense of, just how much you might know versus some other people that are at your peer level. But you know, it's just one of those things at the moment that we don't have a competency framework that will allow us to do assessments around that kind of stuff. So you'll know a little bit more clearly. But you'll be glad to know that PMO Flashmob's working on the competency framework as we speak, and it will be available this year. But more on that later. So there is that commitment for doing school for life, and absolutely it'll be about learning to make a job rather than learning to take a job, which is what a lot of us do right now. Learning to take a job is exactly what this webinar is about writing a CV. That is about learning a skill to take a job. But I'd love to see the switch where actually it's learning to make a job. But again, let's crack on. So I want to just talk really briefly about the skills side of it as well, which is about your what's your approach to becoming more valuable in the marketplace this year and next. So this is about the training part, which is, you know, if you've not come across PMO learning before, hello, hi, that's us. We're focused totally on PMO learning and development, and you can see here that some of the things that people do to make themselves more valuable in the marketplace is to get that accreditation and that training. And just again, for I say it every time, but P3O is the one that's the most recognised in this country in terms of PMO accreditations, so certifications, and you can see that and how that stacks up against the other two. But also, you know, learning and being valuable in the marketplace is not just about getting certifications. It is about, like I said, about being able to understand and understand that theory, that textbook, but also about how you demonstrate, how you take textbook and you make it into, you know, into the real practical to get certain aspects of your job done. I think it's true that any PMO worth their salt is able to problem solve. And I totally believe that if you're going to problem solve, you kind of want to know what options you've got. And I think the more educated and knowledgeable you become within your chosen area of PMO, that can't be a bad thing at all. So that's about the training bit. So what new skills am I aiming to acquire in the next year? And I've got two pictures here. On the left-hand side, this is about you. This is your individual. What new skills do I aim to acquire the next year? Because we've said that your career belongs to you, not to your organisation. However, on the right-hand side is the organisation. So there's new skills that you want to acquire. So having that understanding about what perhaps is going on in the wider marketplace in terms of PMO roles, but also being able to understand what new skills do I need to acquire in order to carry on working well within my organisation. So there's two aspects to think about there. What old skills do I intend to enhance? So again, great question. And on the left-hand side is more skill-based stuff, which, you know, absolutely there's lots of skills that we could be enhancing. They could be getting better at doing reporting or using Excel spreadsheets or learning how to use macros or whatever. There's those really hard skills. But on the right-hand side there is also behaviours, which I know is, you know, it's talking about skills, but I also believe that we should be thinking about the behaviours that we want to enhance or get better at as well. So there's actually two aspects there. So the difference between skills and behaviours, you know, maybe we can think there about what can I enhance? Because again, we're thinking about how do we make ourselves competitive in a marketplace, and all of this is about thinking about the mindset that you need in order to be able to, you know, think about how you're going to put this down in a CV, and then your plan for the next 3 years. I hate this one, only because I'm terrible at it. But we also advocate that we have to be thinking in those kind of chunks. And it feels today really alien, very, very strange to be sitting here and thinking about any work that involves planning, because I don't think I can plan over the next week at the moment. But again, it's one of those important questions around career stuff, but makes you think, you know, well, where do I ideally want to be? Because that is also going to help me answer some of those other questions about new skills and enhancing skills and all of that kind of good stuff. I just want to also just say about network, because a lot of the stuff that we're talking about today is going to be around is obviously building the careers and thinking about our career portfolios, but also about the CV. But I do, the statistic that has been around for many years, which is that actually most people do get their jobs from their network. So we can't ignore that. Yes, you will always have a CV, but there's always going to be those opportunities where the role comes through your network. And yes, you'll be able to show them your CV when they've asked you or whatever. But actually, let's just step back and just think about a good network, because actually, in times of trying to look for work and when things are very competitive in the market, it is a security blanket in a lot of ways. And what is interesting is what it's from a network point of view about what it's proportional to. And I like this one in that it's the number of people in your network, the rate that it expands, the number of people that you're networking with outside the organization, and the time that you devote to maintaining it. These are the 4 parts of it. So it's more than just making a connection with somebody that you worked with and then you kind of forget about it for the next 2-3 years until you want to call on them. If you think back to that recession between 2008 and 2011, a lot of people were scrabbling about and thinking, I don't have a network, I've completely neglected it. I'm hoping that now it feels that people did take more time to focus on that, because again, it will be your networks that's going to help you in your career, whether it be immediately or in the next 5, 10, 15 years, guaranteed. Okay, so I wanted to just set those scenes. So what we are going to do now is look at the actual CV. So we've got about 35 minutes-ish left of the session. So I'm going to slow it down a bit and just start to talk through some of the key aspects of the CV in terms of which bits are important, bits that you focus on, and kind of thinking that you need to be doing. So what you're looking at now is is something that we've had for a while. We have done a couple of CV type sessions with Flashmob. So some of the stuff is actually already out there in terms of bits and pieces on the Flashmob website. And if you're not aware of Flashmob, PMO Flashmob, it is just pmoflashmob.org, and you can go and have a look at some stuff there. But here is about one of the things that we're looking at today is demonstrating your depth of skills and experience and how you get that across in terms of your CV. So it's an obvious question then. So, well, what are your skills and experience? So a lot of the time when most people are not going to sit down now with a blank piece of paper, but I wish you would, okay? So I want you to put your own CV to a side for a moment, because I want you to be thinking with a blank piece of paper about the current role that you're working within. So forget about everything else for now. This is about the current or most recent experience that you've had. And I want you to think about the kind of skills and experience that you've got. So one of the things that we've done, and you'll see here on the left-hand side, is just one portion of it, was to get to think about, well, what are the different aspects of PMO work? So, like I said, we don't have a PMO competency framework yet. We will be later on this year. And what that will do, and you can also think about this yourself, is that we know that there are set skills areas and competencies and all that kind of good stuff that goes into our day-to-day work. So to just put a bit of context and make it easier to think about that, think about a service catalogue, right? So in PMO land, and if you know your P3O, you'll know that there is an Appendix F, which is a really good old list of all the different kind of functions and services that PMOs offer. And if you look at those different functions and areas, so you'll see that it splits it down into the context first. So it's like I'm a project office, I'm a program office, I'm a portfolio office, and then there's a centre of excellence type work. And then there's a list of all the different function areas. So when we talk about a function area, it could be something like risk management is a function, and a service might be a risk management workshop facilitation. Yeah. So we start to the P3O guide at the moment is really being really useful to get people to think about, well, what are my blocks of competency and skills and experience? So if you had a blank piece of paper and you were just thinking about your own current role, if you were to get a blank piece of paper and put it into little boxes like this, you might not have that many boxes, you might have 10, say. For each one of those boxes, you're going to be thinking about a function and service area. Because what we want you to then do is the next level, so getting deeper, doing a deeper dive into it, is thinking, right, okay, so what services am I offering around this particular function area or competency area? And then actually, what the hell do I do? So then you're getting into writing, just scribbling in your boxes. These are the things that I do. So this is about being able to just start afresh, think about just the current job that you're doing, about the core functions and services, the competency areas that you do at the moment, and that will bring out the different skills areas, and for each skill that you're doing, there's the experience that wraps around it. Okay? So hopefully that makes sense in some way into where you might start in thinking about the skills and experience and how we get down into more of a depth. Okay, so I'm going to show you some examples. So let's have a look at this one first of all. So these are from an actual CV, and this person is wanting to put across that they're doing some stuff around, you know, that I'm managing this PMO, and this is how I am managing it, and these are the kind of things that we're doing. So it's all about maintaining best practice and standards in project management and facilitating the group projects and blah, 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 waffle. So what you'd be thinking about in terms of how you might change something like this, it's fine. However, for people that are not working in a PMO world, which is actually quite a lot of people that are looking at your CV will not be working in a PMO world, to use words like best practice and industry-wide standards at this point in a CV, not great. Because it's about, well, I don't know, these words that you're using mean nothing to me if I'm an HR person and I'm recruiting a lot of people across the project delivery department. So look at the comparison between somebody else trying to show that they're managing a PMO. And here is where I wanted to pull it back and say, think about the business again. You know, when we said this is not your PMO, you're thinking about it from a business point of view. And this is absolutely the kind of thing that we will expect to see from PMO people. Now, this is for somebody that's managing a PMO. So they're doing a PMO and delivery assurance of projects and programs, delivery unit. I've got numbers, so I can see the size of the team. I can see how many PMs there are. I can see what kind of projects they are, and I can see some money numbers in there. That's the kind of thing that we'll be expecting to see from a PMO manager that starts to introduce their role around what it is they're doing in terms of managing a PMO. If you look at a particular skill area, which is what we've been talking about, let's have a look at one from stakeholder management. So this is always a tough one for people to write about. So how do you write and convey about something? It's actually quite, it's one of those people-y type things. So this person's saying they've got strong stakeholder management, the ability to communicate and present to all levels of the business. Fine, it's fine, but what about this one? So I've got a bit more depth here, and this is what I'm looking for. A little bit more depth that will give me a bit more of an insight into how this person is using stakeholder management. You can see their excellent communication skills, which enable credibility with and support from senior management and the entire program teams, ability to communicate value of good governance and its relationship to efficient delivery to program delivery team, and obtain buy-in from all. Now this is doing a couple of things. It's giving the reader more context in terms of the PMO and the PMO role that they're performing. It's giving me some insights into perhaps a level of seniority of this person, because of the way that they're conveying and the way that they're talking about things. The other thing that it's also doing is a question that we've got that's coming up later on, which is about how do I get past this whole AI database, people looking at keywords business. I've got a lot more keywords in this particular bit as well, which are all good keywords. So when it comes to thinking about the depth of skills and experience, the advice I can give is that you need to be able to think about, well, what are my top 10 skills areas? And the way that I advise a lot of PMO people to do is to perhaps grab hold of your P3O book and look at it and to say, well, actually, these are the bits that I'm picking out, that this is my job. Some people don't need that. They're quite happy to be able to sit with a blank piece of paper for 10 minutes and just jot down all the things that they do. And then what you also tend to find is that as you're jotting down things that you're doing, you will start to see natural groupings. So, for example, you may see over and over that you're doing things that are touching on reporting. So it might be in risk management reporting, it might be finance stuff, there might be exceptions coming out of the projects, there might be change requests, whatever there might be, you'll see a natural grouping there, which will all be around the reporting aspects of what you do. So you'll know that when you're writing a CV for a PMO role, that the reporting aspects of it, you'll be able to actually do quite a lot of reporting around different aspects and be able to show people and demonstrate on the CV what those aspects are. One of the things before we move on is that we tend to find that categories of PMO roles always tend to have the same kind of 5 to 8 things. So even on vague job adverts, there's always been this thing that you will generally see in PMO, the same kind of things always coming up. And reporting tends to be number one. The second one is all about the kind of best practice stuff, which I prefer to call it like methodologies and frameworks and, you know, process flows and that kind of thing. So it's all about, you know, how we get people delivering projects according to frameworks and methods and all that kind of thing. So that tends to be second. The third thing tends to be there's always something around risk management and issues and change. So that tends to be kind of lumped together, that you'll always get those kind of things always appearing. And then you're into things like where there'll be a role that has finance, in which case you'll see that definitely in the top 5. You'll always see some kind of ad hoc stuff, which never really fits within what's a true PMO role, but that's the nature of our job, isn't it? That we're there to help teams succeed. And sometimes we have got that, dare I say, more admin support type stuff that goes on. So there's a number of different things that you tend to see all the time on adverts. So that gives you some sense of perhaps what you might be demonstrating in your own CV. So one of the other questions that we wanted to cover was the right level of role within the PMO. So these are actually a couple of that came from people when they registered for this particular webinar. So my CV will secure me the same level role, for example, a PMO analyst. How do I tailor my CV to secure a more senior role, for example, a PMO manager? And the other one about how to write it so you get that next level up job. The really quick answer to this one is that you need to be able to demonstrate in your CV that you are already acting up and already doing some of these jobs that you would not necessarily see at PMO analyst level. So for that first one, for example, it could be that you that you've been acting PMO manager while your boss has been on maternity leave, or I don't know, just something where you're really demonstrating that actually I have taken on this particular piece of work because, you know, it's over and above what I need to be, what I've been doing in my role, but actually I want to demonstrate that I'm ready for the next level. So you need to be able to show in your CV that you're ready. And the best way you can do that is to show people that you've already started by doing some of that development, but also actually taking on some aspects of the job in your current job, even though it's not your job. And the same thing with the how to write it so you get to that next level job. It is more with this kind of role is also, it comes back to the network again, because what you'll find is that most people, when they're making a bigger significant jump, it is nearly always through a network opportunity rather than necessarily applying for a job that feels like it might be 2 or 3 steps above where you are. It's probably not the answer that you look for, but absolutely it is the case most of the time, and I'm sure you can probably sit there and think, actually, I am aware of cases where that does really happen. So it's not so much about, how do you write it to get that next level up by using the CV in a traditional way, by going for a job that feels like it might be a lot more senior. And actually, the best way to do is to concentrate on getting that through your network. So it's about thinking about working your network. So perhaps we ought to do a webinar about working your network properly as a future one. Let's go into some general advice. So people are often asking me about the personal summary, and the personal summary is the ideal place where you will put a lot of your your keywords. So this is the whole coming back to the AI database driven type stuff that recruiters do these days. Being able to have your, you know, a really good personal summary that's very clear and concise, and that also does the job of sticking stuff in with some keywords. And I've always had a formula, and it seems to work very well. So here's the formula. We tend to go with your accreditations first, the role that you do, the domain and function that you're in, the sectors that you work in, the years experience and the specialisms that you might have. And here's an example of how that kind of pans out in reality. What we're trying to do here is that you want to show people that you're qualified straight away, because hey ho, recruiters tend to search on keywords like Prince 2, P3O, PMP. So you make sure it's there really prominently. The other thing is that the role and the titles can be very different. So there's no reason why you don't put more than one title in. So if you're a PMO manager, you might use PMO lead as well, or you might use head of PMO. You can put as many, you know, up to about 3 different headings, role titles there. It's not a problem, because obviously what you're trying to do is your CV's got to appeal to a wide audience that might call things slightly differently. And of course, it's giving you the option to put 3 different keywords that all mean the same thing, which is somebody that's managing a PMO. You can see that domain and function is more to do with whereabouts in the business you might be. So it could be like IT, marketing, that kind of thing. The sector, self-explanatory. How much experience you've actually got, always good, especially if you're wanting to position yourself as being a certain level of seniority. And specialisms about, again, just bringing out some keywords that may be in the, you know, the job advert that you're applying for. You might want to switch those about, that kind of thing. You'll see there, it's doing many things. It's really clear. There's keywords there. It stops waffle, essentially. And you're ditching the kind of like woolly bits where I'm a great team player, you know, I'm enthusiastic, I'm hardworking, all of that. It doesn't mean anything. So you go really hard on facts, but also very mindful of what the keywords are. So hopefully that'll be useful for you as you thinking about your CV or the top of your CV. So some of your questions. First and third person preferences, it's absolutely third person. You're a professional working in a professional job. It's always third person on your CV. Leave the first person to LinkedIn. So you're making sure that your CV is not a direct copy onto LinkedIn, because you'll change that language in LinkedIn to the first person to make it feel a bit more approachable, a bit more personable, essentially. But in your CV, it's always third person. Database sifting, how to play the game. Well, we talked a little bit about that already. It's about it is about the keywords a lot of the time, and it's naff, isn't it? But if you're wanting to play the game, that's the game that you're playing. But equally, I hope that a lot of people will think more about how to use their network, so they don't have to even get into this game. I personally think it's awful, but what can we do? Recruiters, if you think about it, they've got thousands of CVs, lots of people on databases. It's the only way that they can physically do it. And you know, one of the things there is, if you're applying for a job, is to make sure that your particular CV that you're submitting is using some of the terminology as that job you're applying for. It's as easy as that. Whatever it is that information you do have about that job and the language that's being used, you go back, you look at your CV. Am I reflecting that kind of language as well? If not, give it a little update, a bit of a sprinkle, and then apply. And then let's see how much difference that makes. Covering dual roles is an interesting one, and we see it a lot. You get a lot of people that are doing both PMO and project manager. You'll get people that are doing like you know, some kind of specialist role that's not necessarily within project management, some kind of operational role, but we're doing a bit of projects. And generally, the advice that I give there is for people is that it feels a lot more natural if you split them. So if it is a true dual role in your CV, you should think about splitting those. So whatever role you're going for, let's say you want to go for a PMO manager role, and you, in your experience right now, have got both PMO and project management duties. You would split that and have the PMO part at the top of that job history, that career history, and the project management bit underneath it. It's about putting your best foot forward. So if you're going for a PMO manager role, you want them to read about the PMO manager first. Yeah. But also, I think it just makes it very clear that it is a dual role, because a lot of people try to do is mingle it, and it starts to get very messy and really it becomes really difficult to unpick and understand what role are you doing exactly. It becomes all very messy. So actually separating them out works really well. General CV advice and stuff, people are always going about 2 pages. You can actually go over to, I say normally about 3 max, because actually what happens is that your most important roles are within the last 10 years. Anything after that, they're only whether you're online, you know. So even though you did a wonderful job 20 years ago, nobody cares. So that's why, you know, shortness of CV. And of course, these days, everybody's got a LinkedIn profile, you know, their URL on the top of their CV. So, you know, you can pad out your LinkedIn profiles with more detail, which is what it's all about. And somebody asking me before about making language more passive. I love this one because I love language stuff, but but also from a recruitment point of view, a lot of the time, what we're doing is when we're doing recruiting and doing, you know, interviews with people and putting shortlists forwards, agencies like ours, people spend a lot of time actually writing a profile based on the interview that they've had on the phone with them. And we're also looking at things like, you know, how can we best put forward less passive language? So I just want to just show you this screen. Hopefully you can see this screen now, which is what you're looking for is action verbs. It's as simple as that. So you're looking for words that are a bit more demonstrating more action, basically. This is exactly what an action verb is. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff out there, and I particularly like this one. I found this website from Muse, 185 powerful action verbs that will make your resume awesome. And those are the kind of things that you're looking for when you're starting to write some of the ins and outs of your CV. You know, so yeah, go for it. Don't just keep using the same old. Have a really good think about some of the language that you're using. But that's essentially the way that we do when we're putting profiles together for people, is starting to look at things like action verbs. So in terms of the next part of the session, I wanted to do your CV. So this is essentially somebody who's been brave enough to give me a CV that we can show in real life. And I just wanted to just take you through, you know, as a former full-time recruiter around PMO, I just want to just show you how I would do this. Just, you know, when I got a CV through like this, what I would be doing when I'm looking at it and what I'm kind of thinking. So hopefully, let me just make sure you should be able to see a Word document now that's coming up on screen. So obviously I've taken out the person's details and stuff. But one interesting thing here is that there wasn't a LinkedIn profile link. So, you know, you're missing a trick. You might as well help people find more information about you. It used to be a case that you would kind of like hide this stuff, but not anymore. People are going to find you on LinkedIn, so why don't you help them get there? So here you'll see there is the summary. You can probably, you know, just from what we've just said before now, about what you need to be thinking about in terms of that personal summary, where this person might already be going wrong. So, you know, there's bits and pieces. So some of it is the sector there, but ambitious, bubbly, highly organised. Like, yeah. It's stuff that's not factual. It's stuff that everybody writes. And what you're trying to do with your CV is stand out. You'll also see things like, you know, with job titles and things, is that actually that should be capital O because it's a job title. But equally, what is interesting when you look further into this CV is that if you look, she's an organised project management officer, and actually, I come down here, I've got PMO and project manager. So I've already got a conflict in terms of, well, who is this person? Which one are they? Because a project management officer in my line of work is somebody that's quite junior. So already I'm getting a bit of a conflict, and I'm already thinking, I'm quite sure about this one because I don't think they're quite sure about themselves. So, you know, these are the kind of things that go through your head when you're looking at stuff. And I can see numbers, and the interesting thing is when you first look at a CV and you first open it, you do look at the personal summary first of all, and numbers do jump out a lot. From that big block of text, it's obviously the number that's going to jump out. So if you think back about that example that I showed about the person talking about the context, you might possibly think about context in terms of, I don't know, number of people managed maybe, or the sizes of you know, the portfolios that your PMO is supporting, any of that kind of stuff. You'll also see there that you can see the sexes and things like that. But it feels all very woolly, and it's all a bit mixed message, because they program manage some small and medium-sized projects. But again, in my world, a project manager officer doesn't actually manage the projects. That's a program manager. So, you know, but actual fact, the reality is that when I open up this CV and I've got another 100 to look at, I wouldn't give it more than a few seconds. So straight away, what I would do is open up that CV, look at the top bit, this summary bit, and then jump straight down to work history. So I missed this bit out here in the middle. So all the bits about the qualifications and the core skills and the personal skills, I miss it out. And I think most recruiters do, because actually what really does matter is is what you've been doing in your last job. We have this horrible saying, which is you're only as good as your last job. And that's, you know, essentially the information that people are looking for. So a good summary here gives you the keywords. If you're looking at the formula that we put, it also allows you to put in your qualifications, the top level ones. Otherwise, your qualifications would go to the end of your CV. That's why we're saying in the formula, if you put the most popular ones to do with your job today, so that will be Agile and Prince 2 in this case, all the other stuff can go to the bottom. A lot of people do this as well, core skills, and I personally haven't got a problem with it because I think it's playing the AI database driven game, which is keywords. But you might want to have a think about what keywords you really want in there, because some of them wouldn't necessarily be you know, useful, like for example problem solving, project managing. You know, if you're going to do it, think about some really good keywords. And again, it's going to change for different types of PMO people. If you're a PMO analyst where the tools of a trade are what's important, that's the kind of thing you'll put there. You know, if you're more senior and you might be talking more about things like strategies and stuff, you'll see the fourth bullet point down there is strong MS Office suite skills. Actually, for PMO, it is more about you know, is the bread and butter Excel, but actually I'd probably want advanced Excel, plus I'd probably want to see some PPM tool related type stuff there as well. Personal skills, get rid, does no good, doesn't help anybody. It's, you know, that's again, it's what LinkedIn's for, that's what the interview's for. The interviewer will make up their mind about what you're like in terms of your personal skills and how you're coming across and demonstrating it in your interview. So actually, it is all about this bit. You know, if you're asking people, you know, when we do the 80-20 thing, actually, if you're going to just do two things to your CV today, it's work on your personal summary and work on the first job in your work history. And you'll see here with this particular one that they've got this dual role going on. And how have they done it? I'll just scroll down a little bit. So they've already split it, which is great. But what I want to know is a bit more context, because I'm a bit confused about this person. So if you look at some of the language that's being used as well, so I don't know who this company is. I know it's saying XXX there, but there was actually a company name there. But I don't know them. I've never heard of them before. So I don't actually have that kind of context in my head at all. So working in a software environment doesn't mean anything to me because I don't know the context of what that business is doing. So what we ask people to do is to think about that. Think about the person that's reading it. If they start reading your CV, will they be able to, in their mind's eye, in their mental picture in their head, be able to see where you are within the business? Because it's only when you start to get some context that helps to drive through details about maybe the type of PMO it is, how important your role is, because actually it's a business that's doing a multi-million pound X, Y, or Z. It's that kind of level of detail that helps people position the role that you're in. So I would expect to see just a one-liner about what this organisation does, and then why your role is there. So, for example, it's working in a software environment, but I've got no sense of any kind of projects here. What we're talking about in the customer communications management and print, but I've got no sense of how many projects are we talking about, how big are they, how what kind of things are they about. For the PMO function there, I've got no idea what we're talking about here. I can't get it in my head. So when you start to look at the PMO things, actually this one bullet point that you can see there about shaping and embedding the PMO functions, processes, projects, tools and technology, actually a lot of these things need to be pulled out, because again, it depends on the role you're going for. But actually you'll see that some jobs, it can be all about defining new processes going forward, in which case I want to know more detail about shaping and embedding processes. What are you talking about? What processes? When you talk about shaping and embedding project tools, what are we talking about? But all I know is you could be putting in place a multi-million-pound PPM tool across the business. But I have no context, I have no idea. So it comes again to, how do I know the level of somebody? So this is an interesting one when you get people that will ask me, when you look at my CV, can you tell me how much I should be earning? And that generally comes from being able to ascertain that by the level of details that you put in your CV. At the moment, because of the level of detail in this one, I can hazard a guess, but it wouldn't be as senior as you might think it could be. That's the feeling that I'm getting from it. And that's because it's almost like we're not quite sure on how to demonstrate the PMO function in relation to what's expected in the marketplace. So I think a lot of the time it's about trying to understand, well, what does good look like? So if I'm writing about my PMO function, how would somebody else be writing about theirs? So what is important? So, do I talk about the ins and outs of the processes? Do I talk about how I have embedded the PMO and give a bit more detail around that? And actually, in this particular bullet point, there's a lot of words there, but there's not much context that really helps you to define where that person is. Got a few more bullet points here, but again, the level of it doesn't feel as senior as it could or should be with a title like project manager and PMO manager. Again, because I have no idea about creating and managing a resource tracker, I've got no idea if that's because how many people have you got across the business that you resource track in? That changes the context entirely. So it's trying to find the balance between, yes, here's the competencies and skills that I have, here's the experience that I have, being conscious that I've got to get it into 3 pages, but I've already said that it's the last job and at least the last 10 years that are the most important. And it is the ones that people will make a decision about you on. So you're about trying to make more detail that will allow me to make a decision to put you on a shortlist. I'm not going to give you the job, but I want to talk to you more. And that's all the CV is there to do, is to get to a point where I want to talk to you more. Okay. So again, I quite like obviously the fact that they have split out the dual role that they have got, but there's not enough detail for me around some of the things that they're doing. For example, portfolio and program management is a massive, massive job. I'd expect to see a little bit more detail about the actual role that you are performing within portfolio and program management in the context of PMO. And that was essentially is that job that's been happening since 2018. So there's a bit of woolliness going on. I'd like it a bit clearer. I'd like a bit more context. So I can see the size of the portfolios that would give me a sense of what that PMO is up against in terms of trying to support it. So, it's not easy to do this I can't, doing a session like this, I can't tell everybody what to do with their individual CVs, because obviously everybody's different. But essentially what we're looking for when I'm looking for a good PMO person is to at least be able to get off on a footing, which is giving me some, so you understand some of the context. So then if I want to talk to you about, well, tell me a little bit more about the embedding of processes. What processes are we talking about? that gives the interviewer, the person that's reading the CV, a little bit more to go on and to make a decision on, actually, you know, some of the stuff she's been doing about processes and things, that's exactly where we are. Yeah, so these are the kind of things that are going on in people's heads when they're looking at the CV. So it's an hour. I could talk about this stuff all day, but you've got things to do. And I just want to thank you very briefly. We've probably had some questions and stuff, but I really did want to just get through, you know, giving you some of the answers for the questions that you'd already posed before the webinar, rather than going into, you know, getting into individual questions throughout it. But what it will help us do is, if there's some stuff on there, we can come back to you. You know that we share all this stuff anyway. We'll be in touch with you via email to tell you when the whole session is available again. You can see right now that we also do have coaching and mentoring as an option for people for individually. So if you do want to, if you do want somebody to look at your individual CV and actually help you, you know, to think about it differently, or to get that critique one-to-one, you know where we are. So all I can say is keep safe, keep learning, keep joining all these different webinars and stuff that are coming up. Keep sanity. We'll be back for more, but thanks for now. Take care.